Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be, and welcome to Beyond Imagination, the Future of Creative Technology, hosted by Technicolor Creative Studios. I'm Dan Sardo, publisher and editor-in-chief of Animation World Network, AWN.com, and it's my pleasure to be with you today for what should prove a lively discussion with a great group of panelists. Our topic in this session is From Minis, Toons to Star Trek Prodigy and beyond, bringing the largest diversity of stylized animation to the screen. More than 20 hours of final show content are produced every week at Mikros' studio in Bangalore. Crafting stories in highly stylized animation requires a tailor-made approach and thus a strong connection between art and technology. Our speakers will discuss how creative ideas are brought to life thanks to technology and how technology contributes to enabling production of a large quantity of content for various shows without compromising on the creative direction. They will also share insights into the studio operations as well. Let's meet our speakers so we can start peppering them with questions and get right to it. Rusty, I'm going to start with you. Why don't you introduce yourself, and then we're going to walk through everybody here.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dan. My name is Rusty Tracy. I've been with the Mikros Group for almost 2 years now. It'll be 2 years next month, and it's been an amazing and crazy journey at the same time. I've known the Technicolor Group for almost 15 years at this point. They were one of the first animation vendors that I worked with all the way back in 2009, 2010, when I was working for Nickelodeon. So I have some very old friends that it's been really awesome to work with hand in hand at this point in time. But yeah, so my responsibility at the studio is to just the overall direction and push to get the creative elements in the pipeline and out the door, and it wouldn't be possible without every one of these awesome, talented individuals on this call.
Pleasure to meet you, Rusty. Vikram, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, Dan. Thank you for having us. It's really exciting to be part of this panel. Myself, I'm Vikram Verma. I'm one of the animation HODs at Mikros Animation. And I've been part of this company for more than 12 years now and have been working on some great shows over the years. Everything from TMNT to Puss in Boots to Boss Baby to Kung Fu Panda. And recently I've been working on a spin-off show for SpongeBob, and it's called Camp Coral. And it's one of the really exciting show. And apart from that, I've been part of Rugrats as well. We are working on a spin-off of Rugrats in 3D. So it's really exciting time for especially for the last 2 years. Even though we have been working on we have been struggling with the pandemic, but still we had a chance to work on some great shows. For that, I should really thank my team over here who've been dealing with this stuff and still turning out a lot of great animation. So thank you for having me in this panel.
Pleasure to meet you, Vikram. Akhil, you're next.
Hi, I'm Akhil Magotra, HOD for Lighting and Comp at Mikros Animation. I have over 14 years of experience in this amazing industry working on some really cool projects, and I'm super excited to be part of this discussion.
Welcome. Dheeraj, you're next.
Hi, myself, Dheeraj Joseph. I'm the HOD of Assets. I'm having almost 22 years of experience in the industry. My core expertise is in modeling, and my favorite is characters. I've been part of Mikros Animation for the last 5 years. Prior to this, I was also part of the same team maybe more than 10 years back at the inception of the studio when Technicolor was merging in with Paprikas and then taking over. So I've been friends with almost many of the people in the studio for more than 15 years. So that's where I am.
Siddharth, you're next.
Hi, I'm Siddharth. I'm the head of pipeline. And just like Dheeraj, I've been old timer, right? I've been around with what used to be Paprikas back in 2001. And in this stint with Technicolor for about 15 years now. And I pretty much run the gamut of all the roles. I was, other than assets, I was animation supervisor, then I was FX supervisor, then I was CG supervisor for a while, and now I'm just taking care of everything which flows through on a technical level.
Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
My pleasure. Natalie?
Hi, I'm Nathalie Masseret. I'm a line producer. at Micros Animation. I joined Micros in 2016. It's been 10 years that I'm working in this industry. I started as a runner and now I'm a line producer.
Welcome. And Anushka, well, you're last but not least, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me. And I'm quite new to the Micros family, actually, but I have started my career around 14 to 15 years ago. And I've always been in production. So I really enjoy the filmmaking process and especially animation because that's what we grew up on. And it's always been very close to my heart. So I'm very, very happy to be part of Micros now, but I have been part of Technicolor as well as the DDU dedicated unit when it was in India. So I enjoy this.
Well, pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to meet you all. Thank you for the introductions, and let's get right to it. Rusty, I'm going to start with you to kick this off. Can you give us an overview? Micros, you guys work on so many different projects that represent the kind of the highest profile animated content that that we get to see on streamers and broadcast all year round. Can you give us an overview of some of the animated shows that you guys have been working that you're working on now and that you've worked on over the past 5 years or so?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the volume is pretty ridiculous and it is daunting to think about. I mean, in the average last 2 years, just alone, like the average capacity of volume in the studio has been about anywhere from 10 to 13 episodic shows running concurrently. Right now, on top of that, we have 4 feature films as well. There's some things that we're working on, obviously, right now. We can't divulge the name for yet just because it hasn't been released. But one of our more recent big episodic projects has been Star Trek Prodigy, which has just been absolutely awesome. And it goes all the way down to, I wouldn't say necessarily simpler in execution, but simpler in terms of more gentle for the audience, the like mini Toons or Mickey's Funhouse, which the team has been working on. So it's a huge variety of different types of content. And spanning over the last 5 years, I've been with the team working with them directly for 2. So I'm going to rely on some of you guys to fill in some of the gaps. But Fast and Furious was another huge production that the team pushed through. And just as I was joining a couple of years ago, they were wrapping up their part of the involvement, but I believe which was the 2nd season. So the diversity of content that's being produced and the volume is absolutely incredible. I mean, at any point in time, there's 30 hours of content in the works at some point, whether it's in animation or in lighting and render and comp and effects. It's just it's an enormous effort. And now over the course of this last year, now that we've become full partners in a larger global family with the Paris and Montreal studio, I mean, that has really it's expanded beyond that. I want to say we have between all 3 studio locations anywhere from 5 to maybe 7 different feature films of totally different genres in scales and scopes that are being completed at the time. So it's a Herculean effort to get this pushed through, but you only get to this point and have this capability when you're surrounded by the world's best talent that are able to actually fulfill their promises and deliver when promised.
You mentioned, I'm going to digress for a moment. You mentioned Star Trek Prodigy, which has been a really important animated series for for Viacom, CBS, the whole group there. I interviewed the showrunners a few months ago. The show has tremendously sophisticated backgrounds and a lot of interesting camera work, and it's a really richly animated show. That must be quite challenging for you guys.
I'm not going to lie. It is very, very challenging, but that's what I think keeps everybody enthused and involved in wanting to push forward, right? Is the fact that we get these different properties that have these challenges, they keep people from being complacent. You don't not having to work on the same project for 8, 9, 10 years in a row and getting these different challenges and these different experiences. I mean, they really make the artist's skill set so vast and awesome. And I must say that, like with that project in particular, episodic television going back to like 2005, 2006. The very first series I worked on was with Nickelodeon called Tak and the Power of Juju. And we did everything you could wrong. But from that, we learned at least what to do better the next time. And then from that production, you learn more and more. And with Star Trek Prodigy, the way that we've generally approached episodic television is you try to work within a contained black box. And there's always software or other methods that take longer or more expensive that can do the job way easier for you. But in episodic production, your tool set is limited because the budgets aren't locked in and the schedule's locked. So really the magic comes from like, how can you recreate that effect or that illusion using tools that no one would have thought to use otherwise, or just cheating the pixels on the screen. And with Star Trek, it's really pushed those boundaries for us too. And there's other productions too. Camp Coral, our SpongeBob series right now. I mean, challenging in a completely different direction, very, very cartoony. But the way that it keeps true to traditional animation and the poses being strong and the timing and the breaking of the rigs, equaling is as much of a challenge for our artists to do it. But we've entered a whole new era where we're going beyond that scope, and it's kind of like I feel like for a number of years we all sat in a comfort zone and kind of shows were sticking with it as certain parameters, but lately we're seeing that all be challenged, and it's really awesome because our team at Mikros has been able to contribute to a huge handful that other studios will be looking to follow.
Well, absolutely. Once you show you can do it for one show, everybody that's making other shows know it can be done. So it's no surprise that the quality of the visuals continues to grow the more work you do, and the more great work you do. I want to this next question is going to be Vikram, Akhil, Dheeraj, and Siddharth. I'm going to walk through you each on this to talk a little bit in your area where you specialize. Mikros Animation has a track record of working on spin-off shows, bringing feature film characters and universes into the episodic content world. How do you handle the visual move from features to episodic, the potential reuse of assets, the process of working to keep the quality high? That's usually, it's safe to say, is usually higher on a feature film because of budget and time. What are the biggest challenges for you on such spin-offs? Vikram, why don't we start with you?
Absolutely, Dan. Yeah. For spin-off shows, yeah, we are lucky to have good reference of the original movie. It really helps us in such way. But on the other side, we still have to be careful about the timelines what we have in television, right? So the number of teams also working with us will be on the higher side. So we have to take care of that. And with the client side, from the very beginning, we are pretty much aware of what is needed to be delivered in that particular show. So there's clear idea from the very beginning. So what is expected to be done. So that is how we move forward with them. And yeah, coming to some of the shows, we also saw that we were doing the TV series in sync with the actual movie. Example, Boss Baby. Before the movie came out, we were actually working on the first season as well. So there were a lot of things we had to figure out ourselves also. So this is where communication with the client really helps us.
Using that as Boss Baby as an example, are you starting from scratch with regards to assets and environments and all these materials? Is there anything that you're given to work from in going from the feature to episodic?
In most cases, Dan, the assets made for movie would be on the high res, like you said. They'll be sometimes not be easy to manage for TV production. So wherever it is possible, like example, maybe the model would be given and it would be downgraded for TV animation and then used forward. That would be the main idea.
Got it. Akhil, you're head of the department, you're HOD of lighting composition. What about from your perspective with regards to moving from the universe of a feature into episodic based on that IP?
In lighting, the potential reuse of asset really depends upon the predefined show parameters, like what is the target audience, what are the render times for that show, and we spend good time in optimizing those assets and workflows so that we can deliver the similar quality in episodic timeline. Like if you take example of Kung Fu Panda, where instead of using the real fur, we use the fur textures. Sometimes for a few shows, we fake the GI as well.
With regards to the work that you're responsible for, how challenging is it to kind of, are you normally supposed to kind of match the tone and the visual style of the feature, how much change are you usually able to do, or is there even a desire to change?
Nowadays, I believe there's very thin line between episodic and feature. The expectations and the final look is almost near to the feature, even in episodic as well. And compositing is a very powerful tool, which help us to achieve and accommodate those creative calls at short levels. So yeah.
Got it. Raj, what about from your perspective with regards to assets? I know we talked a little bit about it, but how is anything? Do you get anything to work with usually? Are you starting from scratch? Tell us a little bit about from your perspective on this challenge.
Yeah, I mean, part of these things already explained by Vikram and Akhil, but I'll just go over those topics again. Actually, yeah, these spin-off shows, have got its own challenges. First thing is we'll have to actually retain as much as possible the established look which the viewers have already seen and accepted. Now the challenge here is, we have to make sure that we still implement that in a budget that's more episodic friendly, though the original assets were created for the feature. So we'll have to probably do some smart planning internally and cut corners and simplify certain aspects technically and process wise so that it works for an episodic long-term format. And then it's a general perception that we always get the reuse asset, but then that's probably limited. Maybe in some cases we probably get only the OBJ files for the some of the hero asset, maybe some characters and environment. Sometimes we get the textures, but eventually we still have to rework in most of the cases. We have to make sure that the shading network and the textures are doable for an episodic format. And then, yeah, that's pretty much some effort that we have to put in. And in terms of assets, there is a wide range of assets that we have to freshly build because it's only the hero asset that we might be able to reuse from the feature. We'll have to create the episodic characters and the environment pertaining to that particular episode, and also the secondary characters and so on. In terms of the style, it also depends on some of the directors whether they want to make some improvisations in terms of little bit slightly top notch in terms of the art direction. So that depends on the director's visualization as well. Then of course there's a lot of pre-planning that we need to create with the creators of the show and understanding the design changes like how I just mentioned some time back. Yeah, so and modification of the rig setups, which is how the animation team wants it to be done. So these are some of the key areas and challenges that we look at when it comes to these spin-off shows.
Got it. Siddharth, what about from a pipeline perspective? How are you? Is it kind of one pipeline for all? Is there anything appreciably different that you need to set up and manage with regards to episodic versus the features? How does the pipeline facilitate pulling any assets that you may be given, things like that? What about from a pipeline perspective?
Well, actually, we're running a multitude of pipelines in the studio. And quite a lot of that is driven by the needs of the client or by the needs of the particular show. Because sometimes we have clients which have the same project distributed among multiple vendors, and they want to be in control of how files flow, what kind of file structures they have. And so essentially, from my perspective, the assets which are used in features almost never work, or at least never work out of the box. So there is going to have to be quite a bit of tweaking on them. Like Dheeraj said, you might just get the OBJ files, or you might just get the base mesh, but then you would have to trim it down to something which is going to fit into an episodic kind of environment. Like Rusty said, that we operated a bit of a black box. The budgets need to be respected, the production schedules need to be respected. So normally we would have much lower res geometry than something which is going to be, featured on the big screen. We'll have to do things like cutting down on texture sizes. You're not going to have 8K maps and everything. So there's things that we would have to tweak, as the situation arises.
It sounds like from what you're saying is that those decisions really, that type of management of the pipeline is based on the show. It's all different. It's always different.
It's not, I wouldn't say it's always different, but it is very, very often substantially different, one show from the to the next. And so what we usually do as a team is that once we get the brief and once we know what the project is all about, so we usually tend to sit down together and then start hashing out what challenges we foresee and what kind of possible solutions would make those things work.
Got it. I'm jumping, Natalie and Anushka. I'm gonna direct this to you, Natalie. We'll start with you.
Yep.
As the volume of production has increased at the studio, and as time pressure, there's always, as pipelines get more efficient and tools get more efficient, it's not like it takes any less time to do any of this stuff. You're expected to do more in the same amount of time. There's always pressure to produce quickly. How does the studio keep meeting the challenge to keep such a high quality of production faced with such a huge volume of content that you produce on such a tight schedule? Natalie, why don't we start with you?
Yes, definitely. I think that there is two really important parts. The first one would be tools, technology. We have to share lots of data, and how we're going to do that the most efficiently, the most simple, because we need to be fast and we need to have the data as fast as well. And the second thing I think is about communication. How do we communicate with each other, make sure that we understand our needs, and make sure that we over-communicate on everything and don't lose time misunderstanding some stuff or miscommunicating some stuff as well.
Anushka, what about for you?
Yeah, so I think the one thing that I think was mentioned before is we've got a very strong talent pool, and everyone who's picked, I think there's a good screening process put in place. So if we're working with very, very high-end talent, and the other thing that I think Micros is doing right is they're looking at cross-training people within, who would obviously want to grow and excel. So people were working within departments, so we're providing them with that kind of internal training. So they're kind of exposed to multiple departments, so they become very strong generalists, and obviously that definitely shaves off a lot of the problems that we could have downstream, because they understand the entire pipeline start to finish, because they've worked on multiple shows, they work with the same people. So the areas of maybe miscommunicating or just interpersonal struggles kind of go down when you're working with the same kind of family for a long period of time. It definitely helps. And at Micros, I think they're very, very committed to training everybody. Like when you get through on a show, you have a lovely long training period. You have enough time to kind of immerse yourself in what would be required of you, so that there are little to no surprises, at least on the technical front, because the production will throw surprises at you. But in terms of the work and what is expected, that is well defined. So that helps.
Understood. Anushka, I'm going to stay with you on this one. Do you feel overall that the quality of animation is getting better in the world of episodic, staying the same, or even decreasing? And that's not just at Micros, but in general, what you see.
I think it's getting better. I mean, the kind of stuff we took from movies, and this I'm saying even as a person who's rewatching a lot of the stuff, because I have a toddler, so I'm kind of redoing all the animations with her, and I'm looking at it, and I was just like, wow, this is the stuff that is churning out now in terms of episodic is crazy advanced, right? I mean, kids nowadays they expect that quality, and so do the adults, right? I mean, but we all know where we started off, and with video games, from video games all the way to features, right? Everything's just so crazy great. Yeah, so it's amazing.
Now, Natalie, what do you think? Do you see overall the quality of animation getting better, staying the same, or decreasing?
Definitely going better. Definitely going better. Years after years. Anyway, we are moving up in technology as well. And yeah, look at what we've been through from the beginning until now. It's crazier, and we can do so many different styles, animate all the time in a different way. I don't know how we do that also. It's always better.
Rusty, I'm going to drag you into this now. What about from your perspective with regards to the quality of episodic animation?
Yeah, I think it's going both ways. I'll throw the monkey wrench in there. I think it's obviously it's getting better. People are expecting more, but there's also like now like niche groups that want to see bad stuff, right? There's like in YouTube, I think has opened up a whole nother thing, like where it's just, especially like for the toddler and preschool content, where it's just about getting stuff out there. But so I think that the industry, what I'm trying to get to, has just exploded and expanded, and there's so much more demand for content overall. But in regards to the type of content that we're providing a service for and producing on a day-to-day, definitely from that angle, the content is getting better. The expectations from the clients are getting better, and you know it's very challenging because budgets don't always climb at the same rate that creative expectations do. So a lot of it is, you know, I think with CG in general, if you look back and I've been watching some of the old ones too, like The Incredibles. I was blown away when that film came out. It's still fantastic, but if you hold it up to some of the stuff now, you know, it's not quite the same. And so I think that really, this group included, you know, we all entered this industry like in our early 20s, mid 20s at some point, and have all grown together and gotten better and better and better over the years. And it'll be very interesting because the next generation of talent that's coming in, the junior animators and whatnot that we're bringing in, it's hard. They have a lot to live up to because the standards of what they're expected to animate with their first 2-3 years of experience is definitely much, much different than what all of us were doing on the early days of TAC or like Penguins of Madagascar.
Along those, Rusty, along those lines, again, I'm going to digress for a quick moment. Do you see, certainly from a technological standpoint and from a mastery of the technological standpoint, there are more wonderful artists working on these shows than ever before. And so the quality just continues to get better and better with the volume as well. What about from a pre-production standpoint? Do you see I mean, you've been in the business a long time. Do you see studios in the rush to deal with this volume? Do you see them spending the requisite amount of time on pre-production that they may have done when they had more time before? Or do you see that potentially as one of the areas where that kind of can get cut in the rush to get things into production?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's the market for both opportunities. I think that we're really fortunate that a lot of the studios that we work with pride themselves in the pre-production. The Nickelodeons, the DreamWorks, the Netflix, the Disneys. I mean, it's something, the storytelling is really true to their craft. So we're very lucky in that aspect to be able to partner with such folks and get a decent handed off package. But also at the same time, because of the amazing work that our teams have been able to do, they are giving us a lot more responsibility, and they're giving us maybe boards that are less defined or less pre-production material because we've been there and done that, and they trust us to fill in the gaps or take the lead on it. Well, I think definitely because of the explosion of the market and all of the different outlets to watch media, there certainly are a share of production models out there where, you know, pre-production materials are just kind of sped through because it's about getting the content in front of kids as soon as possible. So I think it kind of goes in both ways, but definitely within our experience, I think the pre-production materials continue to mature and get better along with the materials that our teams output.
Agreed. I'm going to throw another question back to Vikram, Akhil, Diraj, and Siddharth. Except Siddharth, I'm going to start with you this time. How do you kind of work to ensure that there's a good balance between the volume production requirements and the quality requirements?
I think that is something which, from my perspective, is more of a production question, right? Because there are certain boundaries that you need to define when you're starting work, and you need to make sure that you fit within those. From a technology standpoint, what I would try to do is to make sure that I'm supporting the artists with the tools that they need to be able to balance, you know, the creative requirements as well as the production constraints. And sometimes, like I think Rusty riffed on this a little bit earlier, Sometimes it's just about smarter ways of doing things. High tech is not necessarily better than low tech. So sometimes the creative solutions you can think of, to approach a problem, and which just end up making it easier for everyone to work on.
Raj, what about from your perspective?
I would like to touch back on the first topic where the quality has shot up and then come to this volume of work. So definitely the quality of episodic content expectations has shot up so much. Just want to give an example of another show that we worked, a year or so back, something like Chicken Squad Rusty, for example. It's just a preschool show where we have almost all of the characters with fur. 10, 15 years back, that's something that we would shy away from doing that. And then we have fur on almost all the characters. We have grass. And so we have almost everything for something like a preschool. So definitely the quality is shot up. So we need to firstly lock the style and the quality benchmark that needs to be set for the show. And then we have to work on finding a sweet spot between, where the budget and the technical challenges and the schedule all meet. So something like a POC is something that we generally do for every show so that, we can do a trial run on how all these meet at one particular point. And once all of that is set, then with the quality benchmark is set, the visualization is all set, then all of that is shared with the team and instructed to the whole crew. And then it's all about methodically planning things right from the start. And then it's production that takes over and make sure that it's all planned properly. And then that's it. So it's the clarity on the overall visualization and art direction from the beginning, and then taking to methodically planning things out and executing. That's what I would.
Okay. Akhil, what about in your part of the production?
It's challenging, Dan, and we have multiple upscale and master classes going on at any given time studio, where artists, we try to keep them up to date with these pipelines and latest technologies. Then of course casting the right artist on the show, that makes a huge difference. The talent pool what we have it's really great, and I think the tools, the Sid and his team, they have very talented team, and they have provided so many tools which reduce the manual process, and artist productivities are increasing, and they are getting more time to focus on quality.
Vikram, what about from on the animation side of things?
Yeah, Dan. The initial POC, like Dheeraj was saying, it helps us a lot. It helps clients and us being on the same page. We'll get to know within the timeline what is possible, and we'll also get to know which part of that episode is very important, so we can plan our assignments properly. We can make sure we position the right kind of animator for those particular sequences. That helps us a lot. And initially also we communicate before every episode. We have a launch call with the client. That helps us identifying these core areas, or if example, a new character is coming up with that particular episode, it helps us analyze the attitude of the character, the backstory, and it helps us create a unique character instead of making it similar to any other character in that particular show. So absolutely, communication is key to it. And also once we already have the POC, an initial set of episodes, when they are done, one cycle of episodes, and we are from there on, it's almost cruise control from there.
I think it sounds like communication is key in every one of these areas, as it always is. And it's interesting. A number of you have spoken about ongoing education and such, and that's not something you often hear as part of talks with folks at studios like this. I think that's it obviously shows how important that is to keeping up the quality and the volume of the work that you guys are doing. I think it's very commendable. This next question is for Rusty, Natalie, and Nushka. Rusty, I'm going to start with you. You guys have mentioned a number of different shows, and I know there's a bunch of shows that you're working on that you can't mention by name. you guys are known for working on such a varied number of styles, tones, visual design across the different ways this medium is produced. How does producing such an array of animation impact the everyday operations?
It keeps it interesting, that's for sure. But it's and especially at the size of what Micros is, you're always thinking a year to 2 years ahead. So in order to have these animators that are this versatile, that can move from project to project, you want to make sure that they have the exposure on the different projects. And you're analyzing the complexity of a new show that's coming in and having a deep relationship with all of your team members. I mean, there's so much trust put in Diraj and Akhil and in Vikram, and knowing their supervisors and their supervisors knowing their leads and who's going to be next, and being on top of this career progression plan for everybody, because you have to give this opportunity. You need to rotate the talent around, and you have to be careful with it, because you don't want to do it necessarily in the middle of a production when the client has a great relationship with the team and they're very comfortable. But everything, almost a year to 2 years out is calculated in terms of headcount and who goes where, and making sure that artist has exposure, so that way, you can be as flexible as possible. If for, let's say, 18 months period of time, we're doing simpler preschool kind of softer shows, and then something like a Star Trek Prodigy comes in, it would be a pretty big leap if we weren't continuing to give this exposure and additional trainings and upskillings to these artists to go over and deliver a completely different type of show. I mean, animation is such a unique skill set, and one could master, one style of animation, whether it be anime or whether it's cartoony type. I mean, even with our sister companies, with MPC and The Mill, it's not as easy as just picking up the phone and saying, hey, we have a new show coming in. Do you have 50 animators that worked on the live action Lion King series, and could they come over and work on SpongeBob? They wouldn't survive. And vice versa. So it's about trying to get everybody as much exposure as possible. And when that's not an opportunity, the company has to invest in them. And if it means bringing the artists on for months ahead of time before the production starts and giving them training, not just internally, but I mean, even we're currently doing training with James Baxter with large groups of our animators. So it's whatever is needed to get the job done.
Understood. Anushka, from your perspective, what's the impact on everyday operations that you see from the studio working on such a wide array of differently styled animation?
I think in our industry, because people are very passionate about what they do, they are actually looking for new challenges. So the challenges that learning a new style presents always keeps them updated. And the other thing that I know from working with other studios as well is that a lot of the creative teams, of course, they tend to get comfortable when they're working on a similar kind of show for a long time. But after a couple of years, and they feel kind of stagnated, which would be anybody's story, irrespective of the industry they were working in. So because of the variety, I think artists as well as the management have always something new to look forward to, and that's always interesting, because let's face it, adversity binds, and we have enough of that to keep us on our toes and keep the family unit always looking forward to something new. So I think it's a great thing. It's a lovely. I mean, you can basically then choose what you want to work on next. If something's coming up, I think the management is always happy if you kind of are proactive as an artist, saying that you want to be crewed on a certain show. It's something to look forward to, and it's great to have so much to choose from.
Natalie, what do you see as some of the kind of like the day-to-day impacts on the studio overall of working on such a wide array of animation styles?
Like I would say the same thing as Anushka. Actually, it's I think that having different shows and different styles, that will motivate a lot artists, and it's really nice for them to have the choice as well to jump on one show or on the other.
Natalie, I'm going to direct the next question back to you, and Siddharth as well. The Bangalore studio is working on an independent animated feature, Ozzy, and it's the first studio production that's involved both Paris and Bangalore, which is new for you guys. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the project and what are some of the challenges from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I start. You want me to start? So of course,
No,
the main project is about how do we sync, how do we make our studio in Paris and the studio in Bangalore one entity, and how do we share all the data? How do we sync all the data? How do we track stuff? How do we communicate each other? How do we exchange our knowledge? Sorry, how do we exchange our knowledge? Because of course, we have that in Paris, we have that knowledge of how to work on a feature film and how can we pass that along to the Bangalore team as well, because it's slightly different to work on a feature film and to work on an episodic. So that's something that we need to share to them and to teach them as well. What else? What else do we have said?
Lots. I mean, we still have meetings every week, kind of trying
Yeah,
to sort
true.
issues out, right? So the big challenges, like Nat was pointing out, we would do separate studios, and we've been trying to work together for the longest time. And then Aussie landed, and we were trying to figure out, hey, do we use the existing pipeline at Micros? Do we work out, we use our in-house pipeline and exchange data? And as you can imagine, it's not a trivial task to roll out a new pipeline anywhere.
Yeah.
So what we settled on doing was that Bangalore would work in their own in-house pipeline and Paris would continue to work in theirs. And then we decided how we would split the departments. And we had a couple of really long visits. I mean, Nat, you and the team had come down here to Bangalore and we sat down for a week trying to hash out every single bit of exchange that would happen. You and Manu and Nico. And
yeah, and you always have, sorry, you always have scenario 1, scenario 2, scenario 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 until today.
best case, worst case scenarios, and it's still going on. And it's been fun, and it's been fun because it's been so challenging. And the biggest thing has been to make sure that the files that we work on, and say we're working on animation, we have to make sure that Paris can translate their layouts exactly the way we expect them to come in. And then when we're sending the final animation back for lighting, which is happening in Paris, exactly how that would work seamlessly without a hitch. And in fact, it's all automated now. So an animator hits publish, my shot is done, and it's ready to go to Paris.
Siddharth, just to dig a little deeper on that, how much of what you have, established, what you've figured out, innovations in kind of building this new pipeline, how much of what you've learned in this are you able to translate and bring new efficiencies, or how much does it impact all the other pipeline work that you're doing?
I think pretty much all of it is at some point or the other. You pick up your learning as you go forward, and you try to roll that into the next thing that you do. For example, we are now rolling out the Linux pipeline that Micros has been working in traditionally over in Bangalore. But there are certain things which we are going to have to continue to support in our existing pipelines. So there's going to be, we're having initiatives on which tools could be shared across different pipelines, which tools could be made pipeline agnostic. There's lots to talk about.
It sounds like lots of busy days.
Yeah, I think Dan, if I could add one thing too, like if you were to create like an analogy for it, I think to Sid's point, it all informs one another. But really, like the sweet spot of the success of how this all comes together and how the variety of work and complexity and all this could be managed is like you look at like the difference between like a Formula One race car in that manufacturing shop or like the entire like assembly line and manufacturing plant for like Mercedes. And what a lot of studios do is they double down and they corner themselves into like a proprietary pipeline that they only alone can do. And it's built around their experts and they do it great and they get a great product out of it. And that's very tempting to go that direction, right? Because it's easy, but it leaves you with a lot of variabilities and a lot of vulnerabilities, because if something breaks, someone leaves, you can't fix that. And I think that like the success with what started with Technicolor Episodic and now into Micros Episodic, and I think which is communicating back and forth with the feature pipelines, is that on the TV side, we've designed it to be, you know, the warehouse creating the 5 different models of the car, and the same skilled worker could make that. And it's a matter of swapping out the tools and readjusting kind of the assembly line. And you still have your base model for like the family to buy, or like your sports car that you're selling to the whoever that market is for. And so it's really right now, what's so interesting is I've been in tons of conversations where the Micros and Technicolor Creative Studios head of I don't know what their titles are. They're smart people, technically very, very smart people. And they're looking at what's been done in TV and they're like, wow, why didn't we think of that? Or actually, hey, that makes a lot of sense. Like that's really great. We don't have to use this $30,000 licensed tool a year to get it done. We could do that. And it's awesome because things are ever evolving. They're ever evolving, and it's really exciting to see where this is going to take us moving forward. Yeah, I think like right now, kind of the sky's the limit. And what it does is it puts the power back into the creative, like the art direction. Earlier, we were talking about kind of transforming or doing a reiteration of like a feature into an episodic project. Part of all of that is like, you know, making it its own thing, because you don't want to be compared one-to-one. The goal isn't to replicate Crudes on TV, because it's not going to be that. But how do you give it its own twist? How do you make a caricature of the character? How do you make the lighting a little bit your own? So it's really, you know, all of this boils down to tech helps us, and it's evolved over the last 10 to 15 years greatly. But still, the thing that hasn't changed is the art direction, the execution. The better that is, and hopefully it has a really good accompanying story to go along with it. And as long as those two things are there, you're gonna get a great result.
Rusty, I'm going to stay with you for this question, and then I think we'll have time for one more question that I'm gonna ask all of you to weigh in on. Rusty, with the increase in demand for animation globally, which we've been talking about a bit here, what do you see on the horizon? They might be technological innovations. They may have to do with how the business business is done, how shows are even presented to you to work on with regards to the pre-production that's done. What do you think that you see will have the greatest positive impact on the work you guys do in the coming 5 to 10 years?
Oh, that's interesting, because I think so much of it is interchangeable with one another. On the technology front, I see that there's going to be a big push, there already is, on more and more real-time rendering. And I think that the perception from a lot of folks is going to be that, well, that's going to make the production schedule half as long as it was before. But we all know that if we get that time and all that free time is made available, all we're going to do is spend more time noodling and giving notes and pushing what the visuals look like. So I think there's going to be an interesting mix, and we'll find a way to use these new technologies to get to final image sooner, to enrichen the look of the product. But the other thing that I think we're going to see in a result of just kind of this boom in more and more content getting out there. I mean, that was one of the good things that came out of this pandemic, is like redefining people wanting to see content. I think, and we're experiencing this now, like the studios, we need to invest in our current talent, and we need to invest in the talent that is yet to hit the market. Like there is more content being produced than there's talented artists to do so. It's a great time to get into the industry if you're a budding artist and excited to do this. So I think we're gonna see a lot of investment, a lot of push and development of young talent to fulfill the need. I think technology is going to allow us to push the limits of what we perceive as like being high quality content. And then once all of those things are together, right, I've seen this before, there's going to be so much stuff out there that we're going to get back to. I think it comes full circle, and then it starts focusing on story again, and what is the good content that's sticking out of this phase of productions that's being put out there. So yeah, it's a pretty exciting time.
That it is. We've got time kind of for one more question, and I want to get you all to weigh in on this. And Rusty, I'll just stay with you. the folks that are going to be watching in here, a lot of these people are potentially people that want to work at the studio. Either they're young in their career or they're looking to make a change in their careers. So Rusty, I'll start with you. What's like the one thing you'd want to say to people who are considering looking to come to work at Mikros? You guys have all talked about, an emphasis on ongoing education, both, to start projects and along the way. You mentioned that James Baxter is doing some teaching right now. I mean, it shows a commitment to artistic development that I think is really, really important. And for an artist looking at a studio, I think that's something that is very enticing. So what would you say to people out there who are considering looking to work at Mikros?
There's a number of things. I mean, the Mikros family is amazing. I've felt nothing but support, and I spent the first decade of my career working on the pre-production side of this, working at the Nickelodeons, producing content for PBS, developing IP. And I've worked with what was Technicolor and Mikros, with them as a client for years. And I changed sides. It was like a no-brainer. The culture and the people, it's just amazing. There's nothing like it. And to see how this group has stuck together through the pandemic and grown. I mean, through the pandemic, we decided, who decides to go start 4 features in Bangalore? Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. But we did it, and we felt confident about doing it, and confident with partnering with the Paris team in Montreal. And it's, there's always little hiccups here and there. So just from a studio perspective, I've worked with a lot of different studios in my lifetime. Never worked with a group quite like this. It's amazing. And then just for artists who are interested, it really is truly a family atmosphere. Everybody has each other's back, and we just want to push ourselves creatively. For talent who's looking to get in, I would just advise to everyone, like, we all know, if you're getting into this industry, the hard work that it takes. Like, don't think that there are any shortcuts to it. If you want to work on the world's best content, you need to be up there. And that doesn't mean that our door is shut to anybody that can't step out of the classroom and start animating on Star Trek. We try to cast talent based on their experience level with appropriate projects. I mean, for us, it's also about keeping a balance, right? Stepping stones of projects of different difficulties. But to get in through the door, like me in particular, I want to see what you're doing different. If I'm looking at an entire graduating class of Animation School B and you all have the same walk cycles and it's the same test, it's that artist that's gone above and beyond and has one more test, right? That wasn't assigned by the teacher. That's slightly different. Like, what breaks you from that mold? What makes you different? Because otherwise, it's the same. And art is unique. Art is a craft, right? I'm sure when we all wanted, before we got into animation, I know for myself, I didn't start my career thinking I wanted to animate. To me, animation was the most consistent gig. I would have rather sold paintings at the corner next to the beach, but I realized that probably wouldn't provide a weekly paycheck. So think about it, like, make it your craft, show your passion, and what makes you unique about it. But yeah, it's a great place to work. We have amazing talent, and I think most importantly, if you look at this cast of and crew here, I mean, we have so many artists who've been here for their career, or at least half of it. I mean, that goes to say something. That says something. And we've been through ups and downs. The studio has evolved into other studios, and it says a lot. So I could probably go on about this topic for a long time, but I'll leave it there.
Right. No, listen, every studio has their ups and downs. But the fact that so many people have been there for so long does show a lot about the fact what they feel about the place, so to speak. Vikram, what would you say to someone who's considering coming to Mikros to find work at Mikros?
Yeah, Dan, I think most of the points Rusty put it really well. For someone who's coming out of a school, not necessarily they will be able to find this kind of, they won't be able to get this kind of animation right out of school. But that is where it is. Like, even we every year we keep learning a lot of stuff. Even after a decade of working in this industry, there's a lot to learn. Still keep on trying out new technologies, new show when it comes up. We see new challenges. So that is where they have to take a cue in that they will not be getting everything right out of the box, and there's still a lot of learning they need to be doing. So what they can do is initially is try to associate with someone who's working in an industry for a longer time. Get feedback, right? Observation is the key for any field in animation, any field. So get the feedback and execute it, and again show it to the same person or a different person, right? And get feedback and keep on improving that way. And sooner than later, I can see that there have been so many animators. For them, Micros has been one of the dream companies. So eventually, we see after a couple of years, even someone didn't get selected. We see if they're persistent enough and they're consistent throughout their hard work, they do get in. So and then their journey starts here for a longer time. We can see them. We are able to retain them for, some of them are decades old in this company, and they grown up the ladder. They earn their stripes here. Example, one of them is me. So absolutely. So it is very much possible for someone coming new into this industry to join Micros.
Got it. Akhil, what about, what would you say?
Then I don't have any other points apart from what Rusty and Vikram has said. Like I myself is in like with Micros from past 13 years, and I have seen people going out and then again coming back to Micros. So it's a great place. It's a great place. We value artists. I think it's one of the studios where we talk about the work-life balance as well. There are so many programs going on. We have separate dedicated unit for training. So, and we have wide array of shows, like, like if somebody, feels in a show for more than 1 year or 2 years, and if you want to switch, there are so many options. So I don't think like once you get in, you want to go out. So I'll welcome everyone to just, they can come and join Micros.
Got it. Raj, what about you?
Yeah, I just want to mention that our entire crew over here has got a very wide range of experience working on one of the biggest global brands in the industry on various shows, which means, they get to work with a lot of directors who come from different backgrounds and different tastes. And every time we work with each of the directors, we learn something different, something that you not learned before. And that way, we are also able to understand some of the aesthetic and artistic nuances, especially since this is cartoony animation, some of the 2D aspects and the cartoony sensibilities. And our team has got the ability to get the best 3D interpretations of that. So all of these nuances actually act as a benefit for our artists, and that's exactly the reason why we were able to move in seamlessly into a feature building team. And our first feature that, sometime back we were talking about, it was we were able to migrate very seamlessly into that particular mode of work. So that's something that I want to mention that. And again, I don't think anyone should have any inhibitions toward any genre of work, whether it's VFX or cartoony CG animation. Everything has got its own challenges and credits and specific skills that is required to grow up. So whether it's in this genre or that genre, I don't think they should have any inhibitions in the mind that any particular thing is going to be detrimental for the career or the other one is going to benefit. They just need to make up their mind and choose which line of work they want to go ahead. But I just want to guarantee that if they're really interested in this kind of work, this is the place they should jump in.
A place to be. Siddharth, what about you?
So for me, I mean, I would be interested in having tech people join, right? And they might be programmers, they might be R&D people. So, to answer that question properly, I would actually want to go back a question and talk about the kind of innovations happening right now in the industry. And, first just looking at the problem space that this huge explosion in demand for animated content has created is the need to quickly be able to mobilize new talent, onboard new talent, and, not be limited to talent pools in any one particular location. And I think the big things which are going to be really driving the future of the industry are collaborative and non-destructive workflows and tools. I mean, for example, I can think of USD, or I can think about Omniverse, stuff like that. And a lot of these seem to be agnostic to the DCC tool they're working in. So, you might have someone sitting working on Maya on one system, and the person sitting next to them is running Blender, and they're working in the same show in the same pipeline. And that's a possibility. And there's this whole thing of working remotely. I mean, a couple of years back, it would have been unthinkable almost. And now we have people very successfully reporting in from other parts of the world, literally across continents. And the thing, I'm not even going into potential actual game changers like AI, just collaborative tools or remote working. There's so much potential there, but a lot of it is not really set up to be artist friendly. A lot of it is very, tech centric and very much about typing out programs. And hey, there's a lot of opportunity over here to come and help make all these tools really usable to creative.
When you put it that way, it truly is a burgeoning field that you've touched on so many different things. I'm like, yep. You touched on a lot of them. It's and all of that requires people to help make it art directable and to help make it artist friendly, so it can be harnessed for the creative,
Exactly.
for the creatives. Thank you for bringing all that up. Natalie, what would you say to people considering looking to Micros?
I will be quicker because I think that we touch base on all the points. I would simply say, if we have new journey, be creative, be bold, show interest, speak up, be a team spirit, and adapt. And then you will be more than welcome to join us.
Very well said. And Nushka, why don't we finish this this question with you?
So I think from the other studios that I have worked with and now being at Micros, it's a lovely place in the sense of they are not hierarchy driven, and there is never a point where you couldn't have a conversation with people irrespective of their designations. It's one unit, and the idea is always to problem solve. So it's, I mean, I love the fact that here the focus is let's look at problem at hand, and let's not dig into the the history of it too much, because that's what important. We need to kind of move on from this point onwards, and I think that's really, it's really helpful to know that as a newcomer, because or somebody who's entering, because I think the one thing that people, I think that's what Natalie said. She said, speak up, and that's really important. I mean, artists speaking up and having the confidence to speak up, I think that's really encouraged here. And we create the environment for people to do that, so that we're never at a point where we're guessing, or we don't know that somebody's struggling, or in some kind of trouble that can be solved, and most of the times it can be solved. And if it can't be solved, then that's a new challenge for everyone, right? So I think that synergy is something that should draw any newcomer, or a fresher especially, to our industry. And for the veterans, well, I think there is usually the projects, because there are so many new associations that are happening, and the studio is very fortunate, despite everything and the finances of the world, to have so many shows that have already been cast for and bid for and lined up. And that this basically speaks to how successful relationship has been, right? Be it on the client side, or be it within the studio, be it with the artist. So I think everybody puts relationship first here, and that's really great.
Well said. Rusty, I'm going to come back to you kind of to finish things off here. We've talked about, we've covered a lot of ground in this discussion, talked a lot about some great projects you guys are doing, a lot of different perspectives on the challenges and how you guys meet those challenges across all different styles of animation, feature and episodic. Just to kind of to wrap this up, what are you looking forward to most when you look at what you're working on and what the studio is working on, and you look at the next few years, you look at tomorrow and the next few years? What are you most looking forward to in the work that you do at the studio?
That's a good question. I think number one is I'm looking forward to this pandemic ending and seeing my friends again. in person. I think that we're all looking forward to that. That's like, I can't stress enough about the culture of this place and the relationships. It's everything. It's what holds people together. From studio perspective, though, what we're producing, I mean, like one of my favorite properties of all time is we're making a film of right now, and I can't wait for the team to push that through. I can't wait for. I'm super proud of what our team has done and pushed with Star Trek Prodigy and with Camp Coral in terms of that style. I'm looking forward to the calm after the storm, after we've gotten through the first season on Prodigy of Camp Coral. I'm looking forward to completing the first feature in Bangalore, because after that point is when we could collect all of that data, right? And we look back and say, okay, how do we do this bigger and better? Because yesterday's headache becomes tomorrow's advancement and achievement. So to me, that's what's next. And we have some really, really amazing projects lined up that will start later this year, that are all based on just, the continual growth that has happened this far. So many, many good things to come.
Well, it's an exciting time, an unprecedented, an exciting time in the industry. And with the recent moves that you guys have made organizationally and in consolidation and the expansion you guys are doing, there's no doubt we're going to continue to see a lot of great stuff coming out of the studios. You guys are working all across the world. And with that, that's kind of all the time that we have today, unfortunately. It's been a pleasure talking with you guys. I want to thank Rusty. I want to thank you, Vikram, Akhil, Dheeraj, Siddharth, Natalie, and Anushka. I want to thank everyone at Micros. I want to thank our hosts, Technicolor Creative Studios, for putting on this event. And of course, I want to thank every one of you around the world who's watching this and joining us here today. We thank you. I know the Micros folks are looking forward to meeting some of you, hopefully in the not too distant future. And enjoy the rest of the festival. And everybody, thanks again and have a great day.